start and call the meeting to order.
Okay.
Want to do a pledge of allegiance?
Yep. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, can we have a roll call?
Yes. Randy Campion.
Here.
Dale Horan.
Here.
Wade Morey.
Here.
Jan Beller and Marianne Lynn.
Okay. Make a motion to excuse them.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, did anybody get a chance to review the minutes of the last meeting? I looked at them. They looked okay with me. Do we need a minute for you guys to look over them?
I wrote them, so I didn't have any corrections. I'll make a motion to approve.
Second?
I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. The open forum. Let's have an open forum of the meeting. Did anybody sign up?
Nope.
Okay. So under new business, we've got case number COA 2023-3.
So this case is for approval of 6 single-family residential units on Oak Street, 102 Oak Street, and also demolition approval of the existing structure. Not exactly sure on the date. Beth thinks maybe there's a little inconsistency with the auditor's numbers on when the building was built. Just a quick little history. This project actually, a resemblance of this project actually began in January of 2020. There was a proposal for 64 units at this site. That proposal was not approved, and ultimately, I don't know how many iterations we've had working with the property owners, the architects, developers as a whole, and got the project reduced to what we felt was a fairly manageable 6 units. Planning and Zoning Commission has recommended approval to City Council for a special planning district that's separate to you guys. City Council, Corey brought that forward to City Council. City Council then will vote on the zoning side, which is an SPD for this units. I will tell you that I would anticipate that zoning approval will be adopted by council. We went from standing room only when it was 64 units to 0 as far as the residents in that area. I do want to say, just because I think it's important to note, that this specific area was not in the original historic preservation guidelines. When we first started, we did not have this area. We largely went up Broadway, circled up, included what we call the Bible Believers building, the old school building, and then sort of worked our way back around. Full transparency, when the 64 units was going on at the same exact time that the HPPC was working, walk around on weekends trying to come up with the boundaries. And I think that the project was thrown in the street was thrown as a bit of an appeasement. It didn't meet the criteria in the beginning. I just think it's important to note that. So the six units are single family. A lot of the design features, some of the rooftops not being on it and things like that, where they're sited, moving them away, were directly related to public input during the planning zoning commission process. There was concerns about having roofs. There was concerns about the location. So everything has been what you're seeing, the layout and the plan, I must say, is a direct relation to the public input we got over the course of 3 years. So what we're at now is the final product, HPPC. It's a catch-22. Do we bring them way early in the process when they don't know if they're going to get approval? it's a bit of a learning phase. When could we have brought them? Corey and I were discussing this today. Don't really know. That's sort of on us, I think, to a certain extent. But Beth has more of the specifics. I tried to do my best with the colors, talking to the architect on the Mr. Sabo on the colors. It is one consistent design throughout. Exterior materials are pure white fiber cement siding, taupe brown brick veneer on the first floor facade. All the other features, lighting, doorknobs, everything are consistent throughout. And it is, like I said, it's in the southern portion of the city's historic district. Didn't really have any other items. One of the other things that you see there was to accommodate parking. They created the first floor garage with as much space as they could for off street. That was another complaint that came up early on in the zoning process. The residents on the street behind it were the ones that were the most in attendance at these meetings. So, forgetting all of what you want to do from a historic side point, this is a project that has been sort of 3 years in the making. Beth has given you her proposal. I printed that out for you. I think also Dan had sent you something that he just wanted you to know about the owner or the original habitants of the home, right? The Brock family, and so on and so forth. So I didn't really have anything else. I think between Beth and the architect, you can ask him any questions that you have.
Okay. Do you want to start with the architect first?
Sure. You want to go on up? Can you go up?
Not sure what to present other than what you have, but we did take a lot of time, as city manager has mentioned, to come up with an appropriate proposal for development up there. Other than that, I'm interested to hear what some of the comments might be. One thing, in doing the units, we could have gone narrower type units than what we proposed. We proposed wider units, so we could accentuate an entrance into the house, get 2-car garages, maximize parking up there. With that, we looked at doing flatter roofs versus gabling and pitching the roofs on the front. A lot of that has to do with the actual perspective that you're going to look at these things down from below, sitting up. It would only accentuate the height of these things even more. So we wanted to downplay and mute the height of these units, because all you really would see are those peaks up there. So other than that, I'm open for comments.
I had a question. When you look at your site plan, it looks like the last unit, I guess the farthest south unit, is almost even with the street, Oak Street, as you go down. But it looks like your lot extends a lot farther down the hill.
Yeah, and I guess that is something for discussion. So as you see that lot number 6,
Mm-hmm.
the buildable area extends further to that right side unit, and would like the opportunity to do a deck on there that makes sense. That's where the view is. That's the nicest lot. So we intentionally widened that property line on that side.
But you've got a 30-foot setback. Is that because of zoning? Is there a side yard setback?
It's an SPD. So with an SPD, in a certain way, zoning, I always hate to say you throw the zoning codes out, but the whole portion of an SPD is the developer and the city sort of work together to get something. Like, for example, it was very important to both the residents and the city that the area to the hillside area that largely overlooks Eads, this area here, that it be left completely and totally undeveloped. So at one point, one of these units was over here, And that was an adjustment that was made because, as anyone who knows, this is a pretty steep hillside.
Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of the give and take. With an SPD, you don't, you're not really going to the code, to the table, and looking for specific setbacks.
And I can weigh in on a little bit about that with Planning Commission. And to Mr. Kennedy's point, the hillsides were a significant concern, and the orientation of that lot was actually shifted. That house was more on a different angle than that, and so they moved it and adjusted that responsive to concerns about the hillside. I mean, that was to be preserved specifically because of potential grading impacts to that. So they're on the buildable area. It makes sense from a unit placement standpoint, unit clustering, and preservation of the hillside features.
Okay.
Yep. And if you recall, one of the members on City Council spent a lot of time working at Eads, and this is the beauty of having local residents serve on with your city. But he was very adamant. I guess many years ago there was a slide down there, so the response was just keep it completely undeveloped. So I don't know what the year was.
Okay.
The Neil Orey would mention.
And the owners are donating that property or making it a green space.
Okay.
Yeah.
As well. The other thing that mentioned about that setback, we are trying to maximize the parking. Also, Oak Street is has a meandering right away with it. So, we try to keep there for any, potential fire equipment as well as being able to get cars parked off street in that driveway. So we can stack up a few cars.
Given that's a one-way down to South Second, when the fire chief did his review on it, the adjustment was made to try to accommodate as many off-street parking spaces as possible. And I think we accomplished that. Was part of the accomplishment. So you have this fine line between moving as far away from the residents on Laurel versus trying to find that happy medium. And then also, so that's, again, this has roughly been 3 years of work on this process.
Right. The other point I will mention is by loading the street in the front, you preserve greater green space in the rear of the lots, which mitigates adjacent property impacts for that. And so while I can appreciate a traditional urban approach in that regard, this is what we view as a transitionary site between urban and our upper neighborhoods. And so there is a need to preserve that traditional backyard setback for that, to allow for adequate buffering and to allow for the associated uses with that, with the residential use of the structures. So you really end up with it's kind of a push and pull in that regard. But I think at on point, and when viewed in totality, the configuration lends itself best from a land use perspective when you look at the adjacent uses in the vicinity.
And Randy, it's just interesting. I think the timing, we clearly are identifying the fact that the city has developed a bit of a ring around the downtown district where there's a desire to redevelopment. Corey is leading a complete and total rewrite of the zoning code with a specialist, Elizabeth Fields from McBride Dale. And we will have to try to accommodate this, because I have this funny feeling this isn't the last of these that you're going to see. I often say it didn't take long to realize what they were selling at the Blossom Hill development up on 48 when the sidewalks went in before they did anything else. They're selling the downtown. So this circle has been created, and the city needs to respond with its applicable zoning. So we're not fighting it, where we're getting what we want without necessarily having to go through what the arduous task of an SPD. That's really what we're working on, but that's a year-long process to rewrite a zoning code like ours.
How does the front yard setback correlate with the existing buildings on Oak? Is it close or?
Yeah, we're fairly close to that.
Okay.
One thing I'd like to mention too
Yeah.
is adjacent to it, around over to the other street, majority of those properties are non-conforming existing uses.
Mhm.
So those lots are non-conforming as is. We got an apartment building across the street. We got a water tower across the street.
Yes.
So to identify, like, okay, what's common to this and what's uniform to this, there isn't anything.
Mhm.
But we do set back, I believe, as far as that other house, or within reason of it.
In the packet page 7, you'll see the building footprints that were pulled. I guess that was part of the packet, and those are just some existing building footprints. So you can see in that vicinity, the setbacks range probably, I would, guess between 20 and 30 feet, which is, this one sort of splits the difference at 25 through the right-of-way line, and then there's some additional apron in front of that. So, I don't have a scale. It sort of varies based on the pavement width, but it'll have a similar feel when you drive down the street.
I have a couple questions. On page 17, 18, and 19, what's the context I'm looking at on each of these?
I'm the one that prepared that. So
And I haven't seen it.
Like on 17, where would the site be? So which view am I looking at on 17?
Yeah, it's almost
I-
17. You're looking towards town,
I'm looking
You're
towards
looking-
town.
over the hill.
Yeah, Oak Street, following
So-
around to
on the
Dale, I can help you a little bit here.
That way.
Or for pictures. This is looking down the hill at portions of Eads Hardware.
Thanks.
it's
That's-
looking from Broadway
Yeah.
that's
towards Eads at the hill. Oak
Yeah.
is at the
See up on
top,
top.
and you can see the house on the right.
Yeah, it's the house.
Yeah, the house is up on the right here.
Yep.
This one. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is the turn down to South Second.
All right.
So moving to the next two pictures for context. This is looking west,
West.
water tower, existing buildings. This touches on the setbacks of the existing
Okay.
neighboring buildings. This is farther back view, including the apartment. I'm sorry, closer view,
Closer.
including the apartment building to the right.
In the water tower.
Yeah,
picture about the water tower.
yeah.
Yeah, we got a nice picture of the water tower there.
This is again looking over what would be the Eads Hardware site, existing structure, apartment building.
The apartment building.
And then this picture is building unit looking at different angles of the existing building. And then this is the interiors of the existing building.
This is the existing building
Yeah.
on the build site now.
Yeah, these is interior there, and then adjacent properties. That's our tower, and what basically it's like a pump station building, public utility, adjacent neighbors, and other properties on the block. And then, sorry, let's move on to another one.
And
Okay.
I think you also went into a little bit of discussion on the city council meeting that occurred previously and standing room only with
64 units
Yeah.
was not something that the residents, the Planning and Zoning Commission, or City Council had an appetite for.
okay.
It has then went, I can't give you the numbers, but it largely went from around 64 to something in the low 20s to something in the high teens to something in the low teens to 6. And
Will there
that,
be future development possible on this site?
not on this site, no.
Okay.
No, because the hillside is protected forever. They'll write that in as required.
That's
that
where
the
you were talking about the green space?
Yeah, that hillside, it's coming down, would be, if you go down South Second, it's to your left or to the west. When you're going down South Second, that area will be forever perpetually preserved as green space, never to be developed.
And if I look on the map, the buildings, the proposed buildings wouldn't obscure anyone's view into downtown. Is that true?
I wouldn't think so.
The homes behind you.
Few, if any.
A few, but within normal reason of like my neighbor built a house in front of me and that's their property. They have the right to build a house in front.
Yeah, I don't think you can see past the existing
Yeah.
house.
Yeah. I don't know that you can see you can't see downtown
Right.
from there.
See the skyline, but you can't see.
You can see the skyline. Right.
This site also is elevated at the rear of the site versus the front of the site.
The attractiveness of these buildings at the site will be the ability to see into downtown, correct?
And to walk into downtown.
Yeah.
That's what I was telling you about
And,
this.
and actually, if
ring.
you see, there's a bit above the garage area
Yes.
is going to be a balcony,
A little sitting
a
area.
lower terrace,
Mhm.
versus rooftop. I design a lot of homes in city of Cincinnati, Columbia, Tusculum, Mount
They're very
Lookout,
pretty. I really like the structures myself.
all those areas that, in fact, people want the rooftops and they're encouraging the rooftops, as well as building on severe hillsides and what we deal with in regards to that.
Hillside stable?
What's that?
Hillside stable?
Where on projects in Mount Lookout and all that?
No, on the
On this
On
one?
this, yeah, absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely.
And that
I mean,
you're reserving-
there'll be an engineer involved probably in Lot 6.
Okay.
As that's
Yeah, because lot 6, you were reserving the ability to. That's the most attractive lot because of the ability to potentially put a deck on the side.
Yeah.
Where does the original or the existing structure sit in relationship to these lots 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? and
About where Lot 4 is,
6? It's about where lot 4
I
is.
believe.
Okay.
Hmm.
And did your application? Are you applying to demolish obviously the existing structure? I didn't see that. Or did
wasn't-
But yeah, he did read it.
okay.
I included it in the memo.
Okay. Okay.
That. So lot 4 is
How much of lot 4 does that existing structure?
And it kind of straddles Lot 4 and 5 as I look at it. There is
These two.
a
Almost
drawing of that exists.
I would have thought that was lot 6.
Right about here. Right.
Mostly lot 5.
Okay.
So that's it. That area right there.
Yeah. Okay. So it's really across from this driveway,
Like 4 and 5.
a little bit down. It's like in this area. It does really straddle them. Okay. Anybody else have any questions of the?
Is the existing structure a complete house, or is that a house with many additions?
I'd say there's a series of additions that it
Yeah, that's what I was
likely
looking at too.
with the lean-to roof in the back.
The last time that house was resided in was 19 or
2020. We always check utility records. It was
2020.
2020 in July was the last time water moved through the meter.
Mhm.
And then the meter was physically pulled in July of 2022. So it's been be 3 years this July since there was water moved. Now, I don't know that there's been anybody up in there.
Right. So basically, since the developer bought the property. Okay.
Developer probably actually brought the property in late 2019 area, I believe, is when they first sort of came to our door.
All right. So, anybody else have any other questions?
I don't have any issue with the new design structure. I think I really like the looks of them. My biggest concern is we've got a historic house up there that I guess from my perspective, our charter is to protect and maintain as much as we can historic properties in the historic district. Now, Dave mentioned this was kind of a late change to the historic district, but as far as I know, from what I'm thinking about sitting here, I would not vote to do this because that unless there's some reason that home can't be saved, I don't know why we'd be tearing that down or agree to tear it down.
Let me ask you this: if you were to move building six, if you were to totally pier building 6 and move it downhill a little, would there be room for, and shift everything down and everything away? Would there be room for to keep the historic structure, or would you essentially lose one unit?
I think we would lose one unit, but I think there's a whole series of other things that, you know, might be involved in that development. I mean, they had many decisions on what to do with the property when they bought it. You know, as I stated to others, there were no deed restrictions when they purchased it, what they could do with it, what they had to do with it, you know, back when it was purchased. So I'm a firm believer in property rights. But
when was this purchased?
I believe in 2019, roughly, is when this was purchased by Whitaker. It's real easy. And the beauty of the internet is that
Gonna look it up.
all I have to do is hit a button and I can tell you exactly when it is.
Magic occurred.
Transfer date was 18 March 2020.
Or Corey can find it faster than I can.
When were the boundaries of the historic district assigned?
Around the same time. A little earlier, there was a bit of an uproar or concern of the residents when the initial 64 units came in. That brought some people to a historic preservation meeting, and the borders were modified, went up South Second to include this building.
Just a lack of appetite for apartments.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if using, and maybe I'm wrong because I'm not a historic specialist, but I don't know that when designing historic boundaries that you wait to see anybody who's doing anything at the time you're designing the boundaries and then make your circle go around them. I had a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth with that, just personally, because so that means if the boundaries were set and they came in and they weren't in there, but again, it's an old building, that's for sure. But I think one of the lack of appeal to the area was what's across the street, which was the apartment and the water tower. And
I might add too. I mean, it was deemed at one point in time, about what would be the economic feasibility of saving that building without a garage. It'd be on a much smaller property. The scale of it might be different than the rest of the properties, but certainly it's in pretty bad shape.
Yeah, I don't disagree. It would probably be a financial challenge to figure that out. But I know we saved white pillars. The city figured that out. I don't know if the same type of thing could be done here, where you might find somebody, if they are willing to sell it at a very low price, somebody would be willing to come in and put the money in. But I don't know. I understand and feel your pain on this project. I really like the units that you've designed. I just really have a problem with us agreeing to take down that house.
Now, I did see some of the history that was posted regarding residents in the early time, but what are the redeeming qualities that cause this particular structure to be historic in nature?
Well, we'll listen to. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, that needs a rebuttal.
Okay.
Let's go ahead.
Well, I want to start by saying I realize that there's been a lot of planning and discussion about this project already, but now that it is in a historic district, it's my job to give you an analysis of the application and how it meets the guidelines for the district. When I saw the application, it didn't include the demolition. It didn't give any history of the house or explain the reasons for demolition or an analysis of the feasibility of the rehabilitation. So that's why I declined to make a recommendation, because I considered the application to be incomplete. It is a perfectly good example of the Queen Anne style. I don't think it's from 1870, because that style came into vogue later on, and Jan Beller confirmed to me that it was probably built in the 1890s by her great-great-grandfather. But it wasn't clear to me whether it was built by Brock for Brock to live in, or whether he was a contractor and built houses for people. I'm not sure about that. When I saw the house, I went upstairs. It looked to me like it had been recently broke into. It's, in my opinion, it's structurally sound. It's in fair condition. It's certainly not beyond rehabilitation compared to many buildings I've been in over the Rhine, for example, which have been successfully rehabilitated. The furniture's been overturned and stuff has been thrown around that makes it look bad, but
It's painted.
but it's
funny,
not.
too.
Yeah, right. It's not the most beautiful colors and everything, but the owner is responsible for the minimum maintenance of the building, which is in your historic preservation ordinance under section 1328.16, which says the owner of a historic structure or any structure within a historic district, if such structure is vacant and uninhabited, shall provide sufficient maintenance and upkeep for such structure to ensure its perpetuation and to prevent its destruction by deterioration. Aside from the question of demolition, I did look at the guidelines, which specified that the new construction should take its clues from the historic buildings adjacent or on the block, which is why I gave you pictures of all the buildings on the block. And it is a fact that there are intrusions at this end of the block, the west end of the block, the water tower, the apartment building. The building immediately adjacent on the east is 118 Oak, which is that gray Queen Anne building. And there are two other Queen Anne style wood frame houses on that block as well. And so the four of those buildings together, I think, present the best models for design of new construction. So there's one at 125 Oak, and one at 140 Oak, and one at 118 Oak. So I analyzed the new construction, and I told the architect personally I thought the design was attractive. It's not that it's not attractive. Does it meet the guidelines? So the characteristics are the asymmetrical massing, cross-gabled roofs, wood siding, front porches, and 1/1 windows. The siding does differ in terms of the front yard setback. I measured looking online that the other buildings typically had like 30-foot setbacks, whereas these had 20-foot setbacks, but I'm not sure whether that's from the pavement or the right-of-way or
they're 25 feet from the right-of-way, so
yeah,
they're 30, or
yeah,
and it kind of meanders between them, but
okay.
Actually, we're 35 to 35.7, 33.
But the front yard will be less than the existing house, correct? Is the setback for the new design identical to the existing house?
It's not identical, but
Which one do you want?
No, this is existing.
To 102. I couldn't tell.
The street narrows also at that point. You see it gets narrower.
This is my
So
neighborhood.
that's why we try to.
That's where I live.
Tell you what the
You see the
setback.
setbacks. Okay, so lot 1 is 32 feet. Lot 2 is 33 feet. Then we go 34.7, 35.2. It's a matter of.
We're talking about the front, right?
Setbacks.
I can tell you exactly what it is.
Okay, I see. I see what you're saying.
26.9 feet from the edge of pavement to the front facade of the house.
Okay, say that again.
26.9 feet from the edge of pavement to the front facade of the house.
Of the existing
Yes.
house. Okay, 26. Okay. Let's see. In terms of the massing, it's the roof line is one of the chief characteristics, and I think the bulk is not dissimilar, but the roof line is quite different. Height looks fine in terms of it's comparable to the adjacent buildings. The scale, which has to do with the proportion of the openings within the building wall and how it compares to other buildings on the block, is not out of character. The materials are good. One of the chief differences is the location of the driveways in the front with garages right on the street. And that condition doesn't exist anywhere on that block. They all have driveways typically on the side of the house and garages towards the rear property line. So I'm not sure I understand the comment that garages are not in the backyard, or I'm not sure I understand that.
Well, we try to create more backyard, rear yard space as a buffer.
Yeah. Well, so anyway, in an totally unrelated question that I had was about stormwater runoff from having driveways in the front right on the street, because it looks like there's a lot of water that goes down Second Street. There's potholes and deterioration of the pavement there that makes me think that stormwater is a problem. So you can handle that. You're the planning commission. But what, in my opinion, this group of buildings would meet the guidelines better if the garages were in the rear and if you had gabled roofs. And I wonder if you designed this project in Madisonville. It looks so similar to what you did. Okay, so here's another design that Rodney Sabo did for a more urban setting where the garages are in the rear and it has front gabled roofs, which are very similar to the other houses on this block.
Randy, we really, to be honest with you, couldn't make those modifications without going all the way back through the SPD process because, as I said in the beginning, these buildings are a result of the public comment. If I was a resident and was under the impression that the buildings were going to be moved close to the road, have access from Oak Street, and then this is the final design, I don't necessarily want to be in that public hearing. So we would have to begin and go back through the SPD process. I don't know logistically how it works, how the flow goes for that.
We've got an established resolution at this point, so we were talking about unwinding the whole deal.
Yeah.
And then there was a question about the applicability of the Historic Preservation District, Chapter 1328, which are the actual rules for historic preservation, were adopted via Ordinance 2020-92 on September 22nd, 2020. That's per our codified book of ordinances now. So that's after property was already in process, purchased, multiple iterations.
Is that after?
Yeah, I mean, they owned it in March.
Well, okay, so we had the ordinance was after when they bought it, but their application is clearly when we have an ordinance.
Right.
So I think we need to
I wanted
follow
to
the
point
ordinance.
that out because there was a question asked about when it was codified.
Okay.
And just so I can add, the design of that project, site conditions, area, completely different.
Mm-hmm.
The part of that property sits on Madison Avenue, right at the intersection of Anderson Place. There are no homes behind it. There are two buildings attached, a 3-unit and a 4-unit building. There's a drive in between, parking that comes around the back. There's a whole drive in the back of that. I don't think that's something that, we could feasibly have explored on this project.
I don't have a problem with the design that you presented. Like Dan, I have a problem with. We have a historic house that, yes, it looks like it's been painted really bad, but all the woodwork is still there. It's really not.
In all honesty,
It's
if someone were to renovate that building,
yeah.
the woodwork would come off. It would be stripped to the bones. I do that day in and day out in Woodburn, Taft, Madisonville, whatever.
It would be gutted.
I'm doing a development right now that we are keeping the house in between these others. It's problematic.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's a big house, but it's been so bastardized over the years, but everybody's attached to it. It surely had a front porch on it at one time. That's not there anymore.
Sure.
And there are, and we can't work out how to work out a parking situation with that for that lot. So, I deal with, renovation of a house on Floral in Norwood right now,
To go visit.
but it gets gutted to the bones.
I'm not saying that. If somebody wanted to gut the inside, they're welcome to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying that if somebody didn't want to gut it, all the woodwork's there, everything is there that I would need to renovate this house. The exterior is what we're concerned about.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have a problem with your design, your basic design. I have a problem with that we're demoing a house that should be saved. That's my situation, and I'm trying to figure out a way that we can shift things around and keep the house and build around it. You might lose a house, but you've still got this house. Those are my concerns. I think the guidelines say that we're supposed to save this.
I agree.
Or are you supposed to save a building that has been left vacant for 3 years? Wasn't that the argument that we had with the buildings across from the mobile station?
It was.
We let those go to a state of deterioration. The Wagner house was left to a state of deterioration. The city was the bad guy when we tore it down. I guess what's the level? Is the city, I guess part of our thing would be, should we have gotten on there at the very beginning and asked that the building be boarded up and preserved and restored? Because, that's my only concern. Because when we took down the buildings by the mobile station, those were every bit, obviously. Dan would have told you that in their prime, they were extremely historic, especially given the location in the downtown district, but they won by the fact that they were neglected for a long period of time. I guess I don't know what the answer is, but yeah. That's sort of what happened.
But this is still structurally sound. So
right.
At what point do you?
Right. And I think the concern I have is that the strategy becomes, if you want to get rid of a historic building in Loveland, you just buy it and let it sit till it rots, and then
that's true too.
Tear it down and do what you want. So I'm not saying that's what you did. I'm saying that's the risk we run if we.
I don't own the property.
I
just saw pictures.
Property.
But even in preservation of this building, and again, these two things, butt heads. the markability of that with what the other houses are going to be makes it really, really difficult. And they're going to crowd them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're not going to have, it's it's going to look more odd than anything else unless, it really gets developed in another way. And I think
I don't really think you can say, with all due respect, keep the building and build around it. It's going to look ridiculous. White pillars worked because it's a big open green space all around it. Plus, white pillars worked because the city owned it, and we did everything to create a curatorship. If you want the building to stay, you really can't say build around it. That's going to look silly.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't buy the amount of money that they would stake into that building. Unfortunately, I would never buy it just to say I live in a historic structure with 2023 construction all around me. I don't know. I don't know what that would be. To me, it doesn't make a lot of sense. I get it. It sounds good, but it's totally not feasible by any stretch of the imagination. They're not going to build 5 buildings that look like that. Leave this building in there, paint it, clean it up, and go.
Well, I'm trying to figure out how it would ever be sold. What
would Loveland Museum Center look like if it was surrounded by modern style or buildings full of, I'm just saying that those are a little different.
And it's somewhat of the scale. I'm working on another project right now that's on 25, 30 acres that's got a building that was built in 1919. Pretty rough shape, but we're looking at preserving that building just because there's more space around it to work with.
Well, but that's the nature of architecture.
Yeah.
I mean, you'll have a house that was built in 1900, and right next to it, you'll have something that was built in 1860, and they look different. It's different architecture. Now we have modern buildings that want to go right next to, I would think there'd be value in keeping this building. And I don't know a way to economically make it work for you. That's the direction I would be going. Let's figure out a way that you can preserve this.
Is that something you want to table to try to see if it's economically feasible?
Well, I
do that.
As far as preserving the hill and stuff like that, you can build anything on anything. It costs more money. I mean, you can go down the hill if you had to take this last one and move it down the hill a little bit, you can pier the whole thing. You might have to pier half of it the way you have it drawn right now. But I don't know. It's not my design.
And that is incongruent what we were asked.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think we're kind of at a stalemate here because I understand completely where you're coming from, and there's been a lot of work that's been done. The HPPC was not involved in any of that, and our charter's different.
The HPPC largely threw the street in there to calm neighbors over a 64-unit building. That's really why this was thrown in there. That's an important history with this because the HPPC, with a hired consultant, never once looked at Oak Street to be included in the districts until a 64-unit that no one wanted, was largely turned down flat, came forth, and then it was thrown in to appease the neighbors. I guess that's my rub, because not for the timing of the 64 unit, you would have never expanded this and we wouldn't be sitting here. You all would just look up someday and go, because there's no other mechanism that would have required you to take that building to us. So the thing, it's not on any local register or anything.
Except that there were 3 or 4 houses on that block that were historic. Yes, you had a water tower right across the street.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't remember the 64 unit being a bearing on the walks. That was not in my decision.
I didn't know about that.
I didn't either. I knew the development was going on, but I had no bearing in.
Yeah, it was January of 2020 when it went in front of P&Z, and that's when everything hit. And that's about your timing.
Yeah.
I just remember walking, and that was one of the historical buildings that we thought we were supposed to be trying to save. So,
but
Chairman.
Go ahead.
There is in the application some information that's required for demolition. It says an analysis of the feasibility of rehabilitation, including the cost of rehabilitation, the market value for the property after rehabilitation, and in the case of income producing properties, the income and expense likely to be produced by the property after rehabilitation. This is information that you are supposed to have in order to make a decision about demolition, and you don't have it.
Okay.
I think you need to be, and I know you are concerned about the precedent that you're creating by potentially approving a demolition, and on what basis are you approving it?
No
and
basis.
In this case, in the historic district, new construction is supposed to respond to the historic character, not the other way around. So we're saying that because we're going to build this new building and the historic building doesn't fit in, that we're going to take the historic building down. That's the opposite of
what we should be doing. Yes, I'm going to have to agree with your assessment there. That is contrary to this commission's mandate, really, on should the other buildings look like this building and this building be saved, and make a whole series of historic buildings to match this instead of the opposite. Try to put this building in the middle of some wonderful brand new modern structures and call it an okay day. Nobody's going to buy this building in the middle. It's just never going to be sold. It'll just sit.
I don't know. I think Mr. Sabo is a skilled architect, and I think it would be interesting to see what he would come up with.
Thank you.
It would be interesting to see, but as you pointed out, there is no mandate or no information from the guidelines or the application.
Yeah.
Well, the application requirements
are not met.
Aren't there.
They're not there.
So should we table this to get that information?
I would vote against it as it's presented, but if you want to table it, I'm okay.
What do you want him to bring back? A drawing that shows the existing buildings surround it? I mean,
one thing would be the application for demolition.
Well,
that's my fault. He filled out the application. I never
okay.
meant to check. You can't really fault city staff for that.
That feasibility study that Beth talked about.
That's not going to matter in our decision.
Well, if this project goes forward and if you're going to take the house down, then yes, we have to have an application to demo the existing house. But I'd like to see a way that we can incorporate the existing house and save it in this design.
But if that's financially not feasible in any way, shape, or form, then the building sits for how long?
Well,
no, then you approve it. You approve it because it's been shown that it's not financial. I mean, that's part of the application.
All right, so we need a financial study being done, part of the application, to be able to deny or approve.
It says an analysis of the feasibility of the rehabilitation, including the cost of rehabilitation, the market value of the property after the rehabilitation.
As the guidelines set out.
Right, it's in the application.
So let me just throw this idea out there. If you kept the historic building, you'd have 3 lots, just the way you designed it. You'd have a pretty big green space next to it, or you could even move them around and give them a little more land. And then you'd have this one on the end that could actually be bigger because it would be on a lot and a half. Is that correct?
I mean,
so
you could.
So you might be able to take this one on the end
that.
and sell it for more. You still have the historic house that you can sell. I think and I just think something that would, they would all, I don't have a problem with the design. I don't care that the historic house doesn't have a garage, because it wouldn't before. I wouldn't try and make it match the new houses, you know. But you could have 3 a little bit larger lots on the 1, 2, and 3 historic building, and a much larger lot on the end.
Markability of selling
Yeah.
a house without a garage is difficult.
Yes, but most historic houses don't have garages, you know.
I wouldn't totally agree with that.
Well, they have I meant this house was built before we had cars. So you had a stable in the back or something like that, maybe.
Yes, they could do a carriage house or something.
Right. I don't know. But I'd like to see something. I would like to see something where we save this house. And I mean, what do you feel about it, Rodney?
I work for the developers.
Okay.
It's not my decision to make.
Right.
Okay.
I draw pictures.
Okay.
Wonderful pictures too. Item C in the application is not fulfilled.
That's not on him.
Some preclusion to us completing. That
That's
puts us
not
on a scale.
That's not on him.
Pardon?
That's not on him. That's on city staff. So I wouldn't do it. You can table it and let him fill out the application as city staff. You know, obviously, life is different when you're on this side of the table because you see a project that you feel is good for the community, but you don't want to undermine your historic preservation guidelines. I personally have seen this thing go from a joke of 64 units, nothing that no one wanted, to 6 units of a value that financially supports a lot of things, supports a downtown district. I don't want to play with the numbers to undermine it, but I always knew that at some point in time we'd be in a different we'd be in a different spot. And I'm not going to do that, but the application, I sat with him when he filled out the application. I never once said, oh, by the way, check demolition and provide the additional data. Yeah. So that's not on him in any way, shape, or form.
And if I could,
it's just a technicality.
And I'm going to say something that Corey and Dave have not discussed or heard before many times. I do this in municipalities, you know, all over tri-state area. The process to get something like this approved in Loveland is as ass backwards as it could possibly be. They know that. The succession of meetings, you really are required to do something before you really know if you can even do it. They understand that. I'll let them discuss it with you. I think Dave kind of alluded to it in the rewrite of the zoning and all that type of thing. So, you know, but you get this far in, and then we're required to have engineering drawings, and we're required to do this, and we're required to do that, and then get to this point and say, maybe not. You know, I think you have to look at what the process here is here, and it's bass backwards. Mm-hmm. Period. Because I've been through the succession of these meetings and all the reiterations of it, and how you're just going back and forth with information. So the you know, to chart this thing out is a little difficult for somebody to develop in here, and it's well known. So and they didn't create it. But I think it's something everybody has to participate in and take a look at it and saying, you know, are we being fair in a process here? And I might reiterate, and this whole thing started before it was a historic district.
I agree. Mm-hmm. But we still have a set of guidelines, and that's, you know.
I mean, I'm just stating the same thing you're stating.
Yeah.
You know, I have guidelines too.
Right.
We don't disagree with what you said.
Again, I'd like to see the feasibility study that Beth has pointed out that's missing. Till then, I can't vote until then.
Okay.
May I ask?
We would have to.
Does it say who does the feasibility study?
What was the question?
Who is the feasibility study created by?
By the applicant?
Okay.
I mean, that's the way I read it,
Okay.
in the application.
All right.
But I don't know, whatever arrangement you might make with the city. But I'm just reading the application.
Got it.
I have a question regarding the historic boundaries and what deems a property of historic significance. Just because it's in the boundary, or does this property have actual historic value? And is that value to the city of Loveland or the state of Ohio? And if so, is there an appropriateness to register it as a historic site? That's never clear to me on this discussion.
All right. Well, typically you would have historic districts, or you could have an individual landmark property. And you've just designated several individual landmarks. But within a historic district, not every building is historic. So they are usually labeled either contributing or non-contributing.
Right.
So the apartment building and the water tower are non-contributing. And then you have to evaluate the rest of the properties as to whether they're contributing or not. And all of the other buildings on that block, when I looked at them, I considered them as contributing.
Right.
If they were relatively intact and a good example of their style and period. And the building next door to this site at 118 Oak has just been renovated.
Correct.
Yeah. So obviously there are people that like these.
May I ask the question? If somebody at 140 Oak purchases that property and wants to renovate it in any way, I guess they come back through this board here.
Yes.
Approval.
Not for interior.
No, not interior.
No.
Exterior improvements.
No, I'm saying
Yeah.
in any way, let alone tear it down. But
So if
Just, the exterior. Changes would be subject to review. So, but I am not clear on if there is a document that exists that identifies the individual properties in the district as to whether they're contributing or non-contributing.
There,
We
went
did
through-
I
that.
think Craig has it.
Yeah,
Frank has it.
yeah.
So what we did is we surveyed the whole area, and then as a board, we voted, and pulled our answers and came up with a document of what was contributing and what was non-contributing.
as does
Before-
OTR and
That was
other
before
places.
this was in
Yeah.
the district.
So, and I believe this would have been a contributing structure,
Yeah.
as were the other ones that were on Oak Street, and the water tower and the apartment building would have been non-contributing.
Right.
Right. So you could, any non-contributing building that somebody wanted to tear down,
I would have no problem with that.
be no problem.
As an example, and to help me with my lack of understanding, was the mobile gas station a contributing structure, being a fine example
No.
of
I
a
think it was.
period gas station for this time, although 1900s, not 1800s.
It could be. I mean, I've seen early gas stations like, 1910, 1920,
Right.
early.
That one was not.
That was not. The
I don't know what
1910.
you're talking about,
Yeah.
but
And,
I was just using it as an example.
Yeah, that could have been a contributing. Yeah.
It
And
could have been.
Could have been. Yeah.
well, you had a board of 6 people or whatever that it was an average, and there was a lot of
It was
discussion.
average. I
a
agree.
lot of
I was trying
discussion.
to just use it as an example of
Yeah.
how you weigh these two things against each other.
And a lot of times, if you had a building like the ones that we allowed to be taken down, they were on the corner. They had the one white building had been altered so many times. There was like about 5 additions on it, and I didn't consider it a contributing structure, even though it was probably built in the 1890s.
Yeah, and even if I go back to the structures that are here, I look at this structure, the one that's up on top of the hill that we're currently talking about, as a combination of the two structures on page 23 and 25. It doesn't seem to be an individual. It seems to be a combination of two buildings.
Well, that one was built way prior to those.
That one was?
Oh, yeah.
Prior to these two?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Because I see the back half looks like this and the front half looks like this. And when I say this and this, on page 23, the gray structure that looks like recently rehabilitated.
Oh, this is an early 1900s building. It's an American Foursquare,
Yeah,
and it had a front porch that was enclosed.
they closed
So,
that in.
Yeah.
But when I look at the property that's in question, it shows examples of this property and the front portions,
Yeah, it's not dissimilar.
and examples of this property and the back portion. Gabling, windowing, hip roof. The only thing missing is the dormer. This dormer is placed around on the side on this one. So,
Well, there's similar elements.
yeah.
All right. Well, we don't want to keep beating a dead horse. What do we
All right.
need to do?
I think I think we should table it, and maybe you can bring us a study that says that it's not economically feasible to do this with that structure being there. Or I'd like to see a design that showed how you incorporated it.
Okay.
Do I hear a motion?
Yeah, I'll make that motion. Somebody want a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. I may like to add in closing too that it becomes not clear to me how we would approve or how we would disapprove on what would really set the criteria or the meter stick, or how would we scope the financial study. I can't ask an individual to go back and spend another $4,000 or $5,000 to do a study of the area if we don't intend to consider it at its merit. So how would we scope what that financial study is? In other words, does it take $75,000 to put into the home? I can't sell it for under $150,000. The property is really worth a lot more than that.
Yes,
Then how does it become economically viable?
that's right.
So that's the
yeah.
postscript I'd really like to add to this on how, because I want to approve it, but on the merits of this commission, I cannot, as what has been pointed out.
Yeah. So an estimator is going to have to do a cost estimate for rehabilitating the building. There needs to be some assessment of the market value, right, before and after the rehabilitation, and is it economically feasible to renovate it and sell it at market? That's the question. Is it
Right,
feasible to do that?
Well, the scope would also have
And-
to include what's the plot size for this building, because the land size that's
Mhm.
in question is a lot bigger than what a lot for this house.
Well, there's the value of the land too.
We need to move.
So we,
We
yeah,
need to move.
as I say, we've tabled this
We tabled
discussion for now.
Yeah, I think
Ron.
so.
I've got what you said, Dale.
Thank
Okay,
you,
thank you.
Rodney.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Hello,
Hi.
I'm Stacy Lund, and I'm supposed to do last month. I know, I thought you were kidding. You weren't kidding. I am proposing a mural on this, what'd you call it? It's not historical, so it's not.
Contributing.
In a non-contributing structure.
Peter, see how ugly it is? And we would like to turn this into a beautiful mural that will honor children in the Level community that have passed away, and that would be age 3 through 29. And if you can go to the next, the one below it. I think it was on the jack. I presented our work last month, and the board asked for some changes, and so this is an updated rendering. If you go a little lower, those wings are in white, but they will actually be like the picture if you scroll up like that. And so that is the new rendering with water and tigers, and then the colors being. So there's no neon. And then if you can go to the other slide, on the top.
This one?
No, the one above that.
Oh, okay.
They're out of order.
This one?
No.
Oh, I get it. I'm sorry. The
Yeah,
top of the list.
The top Angels by the Trail. These are other murals that are in Loveland right now.
Mm-hmm.
So where are those?
One's
One is Happy's.
Loveland, West Loveland.
That is on
This is on West Loveland
just
before
going
Dee's
up the
Dairy.
hill past the Whippy Dip.
and that picture.
Okay.
The Whippy Dip.
Local vernacular.
I know. I love it.
Okay. Well, thank you for at least giving us another rendering. I don't see any reason to not approve it. I'd like to see it be more not so graffiti artist stuff, but that's the guy that you picked, you know.
Yeah, that's the artist.
Yeah. So that's the artist.
Like graffiti. It is so beautiful. If I can't take you on a field trip, but if I could, I would take you to Mason and show it to you live. It is beautiful and uplifting and sweet, and I just think when you look at that wall, there's so much traffic there. It's on the bike trail. There's a huge parking lot there. That building is not attractive as it is right now, and I am going to turn this into a beautiful focal point that people drive to go see.
Well, the picture of the angel looks much better than the rendering. So based on the picture of the angel, I think that's fine. I think his concept is just real cartoonish to me.
That's
you know.
because that's a mock-up. I mean, he's painting that. So his art, he's a beautiful artist. That's the artwork in the presentation, which I think I saw some of you flip through it. From the last presentation, I gave examples of the artwork that he did.
Yeah.
You know, it's definitely, I know, and he said the tigers are going to look better, the whole thing will look better because he's going to paint it. That's just, you know, he pulled those tigers off the internet because he and spray paint on a computer.
Sure. So my personal feeling is I'm an artist too, and I don't know, this looks terrible in my opinion, but his renderings look fine, you know, and I'd have to say, I think we should just approve it. And I'm sure that I just think his mock-up is just not, it doesn't look good to me, but I think the final product will be good.
Yeah, I agree.
And if it isn't, it's just paint,
right?
You know? So
hang on, it's not just you.
Well, I know, but the other thing is, and it may be there forever because you have a group of people that are going to have a vested interest in this wall,
right.
And I could see somebody selling the property and then somebody going, no, you're not going to take that wall down, you know. So public opinion will go into it too. So it might be there forever. But that's my opinion. Any other
Before I make a comment on this, all I have to say is the white wall or the mural, I'd rather have the mural. However, I'm going to go back and say I'm confused by the mural.
Yeah.
It's not that I don't like it. I'm confused by it. I don't see a theme that runs through it. I see tigers sitting on the side of a pair of wings that are floating in air. I'm failing to see the significance. Now, I come back to Angel Alley over here. I do see the significance in what's going on. There seems to be a more blended approach to the artwork. The scheme even seems to be appropriate. Over here, the color scheme, I can't pick out a scheme.
I apologize. The artist is he's spray paint.
Yes, I know he's a paint artist.
His renderings are not his artwork.
Right.
That's not his medium. Is to use computer. I asked him for a mock-up, and that's what I got. So it should look better than that. I'm not going to be able to get exactly what it looks like. That's why.
And I appreciate that.
Mason is because that is what it turned out to be.
Right.
Beautiful, and it's very flowy, and there's a theme. The theme is to be happy and honor these children. There's on the Angel Alley, some of them.
There's names. Right. Yeah. Will there be that in this?
Yeah.
There are elements of that. Because that was my next question. What attaches this mural to the remembrance of those who passed away too young?
Yeah, the names will be painted in front of you.
Okay.
The difference, and I don't know if I include that in, let me look before I talk about it. The Angel Alley in Mason, she actually had blocks with the children's names in it, and we won't be doing that because she ended up running into. No, I didn't include it, so you don't need to worry about it.
You talked about that last time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the blocks just she thought there was only going to be 19 children, and there ended up being 60, so all the blocks were filled within like 3 weeks. So I decided to not do that. So there won't be like a block with the child's name. It'll just be painted. So there'll be like
Yeah, and I like that idea better because I don't want empty spaces waiting for somebody, nor do I want them all filled to remind me of how many tragedies
so this
there really
is
are.
just be names in it. There'll be butterflies with names in it, flowers with names in it. The initial names will be painted by him. And then after that, it'll be a Loveland High School student that will paint them. Or if the artist needs to touch up, I'll have him come back.
Has the artist ever done anything this big? Because this is a very big building.
Yes, Angel Alley is almost that size.
Oh, is it? Okay.
He is Angel Alley in Mason?
Yes.
That's his work? Okay.
Yes.
Stacey, I know I asked this before. How will this be maintained?
By me. I mean, not me, but Angel Alley nonprofit.
Angel Alley nonprofit.
Well, ultimately, it's the owner of the building. It's responsible.
It would be Dale, but Dale's my neighbor, and I committed to him that I would take care of it.
Yeah.
So it's called Angel Alley.
Angels by the Trail.
Angels by the Trail. Okay. And that's a 501c or?
It will be. I just applied today.
Congratulations. Yeah, the only reason I'm asking that is paint starts peeling on it or it starts looking ratty. Who do we go to get?
It would be me.
Get that.
We're also planning on landscaping the around the tree and in front of it. The other great thing about this mural is that sewer pipe will be going away. So Dale said he would move that.
There's a
So you
sewer
have to
pipe.
look at that anymore.
To the right, lower right.
Oh, that little one right there?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's going to be very visible, however it comes out.
Right.
Yep. No doubt.
You can see this from my kitchen window inside my house.
In the winter.
Yeah, in the winter. That's right. That's
Oh,
right.
do you live in that cool house?
Yeah.
So
I love that house.
Are you going to see that mural from your window?
I'm going to see it from inside the house and anywhere in the backyard or the front yard.
Should be contributing to it then.
Yeah.
It's part of the visibility.
Okay. Is
What
there any?
section do you see, and we can make sure you like it?
Is there any other discussion?
No, I don't have any other
No,
discussion.
I'll just repeat like I did last time. I would approve it, just knowing that it is on it is temporary, and it
Yeah.
could be the time frame of its longevity is a variable that if someone buys the property, they're not limited to keep that. Whereas where you said you would be pressuring them to keep it, I would not see that as.
They're saying the community way.
Well,
I'm just saying
I'm
it's-
just saying that I would only vote for this knowing that this is temporary, that this could last a year, this could be 5 years, 10 years. That property sold, that owner has no obligation to keep it.
That's true.
The only thing I'm
Sure.
saying.
Yeah, I totally understand.
I'm just saying the emotional thing behind it.
I agree, but I just, like I
gonna
said, I
have-
just want to be on record that it could.
It could be changed tomorrow.
Right.
Yeah, it's just paint.
I-
So
I like these wings a lot more.
Yeah, those are actually going to be the wings.
okay,
I just am not going to have. I didn't want to pay him to like draw that out.
Okay.
Because
Yeah.
that would be.
The nice thing about maintenance on a particular type of artwork like this, it's very simple to maintain, to touch it up. The graffiti artists are always able to touch up their work over time. I've been through a few of these types of alleys in other cities too. They're absolutely stunning to walk through. I really enjoy one I see in Knoxville all the time. That is truly a graffiti alley, and it's just beautifully maintained. So I'm just saying that I think this would be maintained.
Do you want to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve this as it stands. The colors are bright. I'm sorry.
I think they'll fade though. I mean, this.
They
is
will.
gonna-
The sun will take the reds out pretty quick.
It'll fade. One other question that I have is they're going to use a lift, and it would be. He was saying that he probably needs like on half of the bike trail. Do I need to get a permit for that?
Yeah, you need to work.
To ODNR that we don't.
It-
I can't give. We're just not allowed.
yeah.
Was that through?
Ohio Department of Natural Resources.
Okay,
It's not our
like
trail.
through that park, whatever.
Yeah, that's not our trail. It's theirs.
Okay,
Yeah,
so go through
The right of way
trail.
of the bike trail is extremely wide. Part of the Linda Cox lot is actually DNR's right of way because it used to be railroads.
Right.
So
Okay, so
Do you have a number that she can contact her?
I can figure it out. 'Cause I
Okay.
yeah, it's no. You contact Melissa Clark. I'll give you her number.
Okay.
She is the keeper of the bike trail. She's out of Cowan Lake. I'll get you her contact information.
Okay, you can just email it to me.
Yep.
Okay.
So we have a motion already.
Yeah, we have a motion.
I'll
Yeah, I
sec-
did motion that
I'll
we
second
approve.
it.
And you'll second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
You've got a mural.
We have a mural.
I could hug and kiss all of you, but I won't.
So I saw like 40 people in front of it
Yeah,
the other day.
Just grab that.
Was that your group?
No, actually, that's funny that you said that because I saw those
So what?
pictures. I'm like, oh, that would look so much better with that mural behind them. It was
We need a motion to.
the
Yeah.
high school.
Oh,
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It
Sorry.
was
Thanks.
the